everybody. Welcome back to the Straight Outta BS podcast. Thank you so much for your continued support. I'm working on getting to 1,000 subscribers. If I can do it before Christmas, that would be a wonderful Christmas present. But if I can't do it before Christmas, definitely before my birthday in March. I'd really appreciate it. Thank you to everybody who's interacted with the video. Anything you do with the video, like even if you hate my work, dislike the video. It'll push it out of your algorithm and push it into somebody else's algorithm that might watch my videos. I don't know why you'd hate my content, but interacting with the video in any way helps the algorithm. It helps YouTube see that people are interested in this and that I need to push it out to other people, which is very important in this realm because spreading awareness is the reason we're doing this, and giving a voice to the children that have no autonomy or can't make choices for themselves. So that's what this is really about. Thank you guys to all my supporters. Thank you to my Patreon members. Donations are never expected, so they're always extremely appreciated. Thanks to anybody who's joined the channel. And so thank you for all of that. I want to do a moment of silence for the person still struggling with intrusive thoughts or addiction or anything like that. So on the count of 3, I'm going to do a moment of silence. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you for that. And without further ado, I want to go ahead and introduce my guest for the day. Go ahead and introduce yourself and where you went and what years.
Hi, my name is Jennifer Strong. I was in a few different programs because I was a ward of state in the state of Nebraska from the years, I want to say 1989 until around 1992. I was in Nova Therapeutic Center, Utaholly Girls Home, Geneva Reformatory for Girls, which was kind of like a youth prison. The Douglas County Youth Correctional Center, Nebraska Children's Home. I was in a foster home. Midlands Community Hospital. That's kind of where this whole toward the state of Nebraska places started, was at the adolescent psychiatric ward at Midlands Community Hospital. Some of these places are not open any longer, but quite a few of them still are. I was in these programs before the whole WASP and Ivy Ridge and Casa by the Sea and all of that really started taking root and getting up off the ground. But I really think some of the programs that I were in may have been the models for what those programs became, except they were run by the state. So, I mean, how are you going to fight the state? How are you going to come out against the state? I guess in some aspects, I'm glad that those places did open up because they're private entities and we can target them a little bit easier than going after a facility that's owned and operated by a state government agency. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
So yours was before, were they like religious? Okay, so was this, I'm a little bit confused. So was this like a foster care thing, like just because you didn't have a place to live, or why did you go to the first place, and why did you continue to go to these places? Was it just because you didn't have a family and didn't have anywhere else to go, or were you sent there?
No, I was having problems in junior high. I've always been a socially awkward person. I'm ADHD. I'm diagnosed on the autism spectrum. And so I just started finding interest in boys. That went a little bit too far. At a very, very young age, I was sexually active. I went to a counseling session with my parents, and to try to fix me so I can act right and stop acting out and all these behavioral problems. And I went straight from the psychiatrist appointment to the mental facility. And I think they knew that that's what was going to happen. I just remember that afternoon particularly throwing a fit because I wasn't going to get to call any of my friends and say goodbye. I didn't get to go home and pack a bag. They'll bring stuff up to the hospital for me. My first
Hold on a second. Like, I don't know if it froze on your end, but could you say what you just said over again, because it literally froze. And then, yeah, sorry about that. I'll just cut
Okay.
that out. But what did you just say?
Okay. So I went straight from a psychiatrist appointment to an inpatient adolescent psychiatric ward. The first time that happened to me was at the age of 12. And I was sexually active. I was always a really socially awkward person, especially as a kid. Um, I I was just trying to fit in. I was just trying to do something that seemed like normal, like what the other kids were doing, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so I think my parents knew what was going to happen, because they were very quiet and stoic on the way there. I remember them, just really stone faced. And I just remember throwing a fit because they weren't going to let me go home and pack a bag. They'll pick things out for me and bring them up to the hospital. I wasn't going to get to contact anybody and tell anybody where I was going. I basically just wasn't going to be at school for the rest of the school year. That was my first stint in the psychiatric ward. I was in there for a couple of months, and they transitioned me back home. Went through the end of junior high and my freshman year of high school. We had some incidents, but at the time I was seeing the same doctor that I had been seeing in the hospital. So there was never really, for me at that point, any therapy. It was just, we can't get her to behave. We can't get her to sit still. We can't get her to be quiet. And these temper tantrums, just sedate her, change her medication, give her more medication, just sedate her. So like between the ages of 12 and 15 years old, there was like no coping skills whatsoever, just a plethora of different psych meds. And then again at the age of 15, um, I just wanted to have friends. I was hanging out and skipping school sometimes, going shopping, smoking a little bit of pot. I was still getting good grades in school. I was still going to school enough to be able to get good grades and pass, you know. It hadn't become that much of a problem yet until I started hanging out with a group of sharps, not racist skinheads, but the trads, traditionals. And I shaved my head, and my mother and I got into an argument about it. And that was it. I went back to the same psychiatric hospital that I had been to at the age of 12, Midlands Community Hospital in La Vista. I think the hospital is under a different name now, but and from there, this is where the story gets really interesting. Some of my behavioral problems and issues that I had growing up as a teenager were trauma responses to physical and other kinds of abuse as I was a child. It was my sister who was I was adopted, so my brother and sister were quite a bit older than me. It was her first husband. And my mom and my sister knew that it was happening, and they didn't do anything to protect me. And so I just kind of over the years developed my own ways to protect myself. And hanging out with this group of rough and tumble guys, and they've all got their heads shaved and wearing boots and big burly guys, I think was another way, not just that I fit in, but I felt like these were my homeboys. They were going to protect me. You
Yeah,
know,
you
finally
felt safe.
somebody would stand up for me.
You felt
Yeah,
safe.
I really did with this group of market rats, we were called in Omaha. And so I shaved my head, and my mom and I got into a fight, and they put me in the psychiatric ward. And after about a week of being up there, I come to find out that they have hired the stepfather of my sister's husband, who was abusing me, to represent my parents in court, to make me a ward of state. And because my parents were petitioning for me to be a ward of state, it wasn't like I had the police called on me so many times. The state stepped in and took. My parents were petitioning for the state to take custody of me. And on two teachers' salaries back in 1989, 1990, they were paying almost $2,000 a month to the state of Nebraska to keep me off their hands, basically. So once they got all that paperwork done and transferred me over onto the state insurance, they weren't going to cover my stay at the hospital anymore because I had already been there long enough. So that's when the first place I went to was Nova Therapeutic Community. And it was anything but. It was grown men and women living with adolescent and teenage boys and girls, which the life experience gap between what on earth were they thinking about putting us in the same therapeutic groups and together, you know?
Yeah.
So everything there was really rough when I first got to Nova. And when I went to Nova, it's still open and operating in Nebraska, but now last I looked at their website, from what I understand, they're accredited. But when I went there, they were not. It wasn't like licensed counselors and professionals running the place. It was I don't know, people that had been through the program and graduated from the program. Now they were part of the staff running the program, and it was a nightmare. So they went through all my stuff and they confiscated t-shirts and jeans and things that I wasn't allowed to have. And I had some medical issues with my stomach even back then at the age of 15. That didn't matter. They weren't going to do anything special to accommodate my dietary restrictions or needs or anything like that. It was just very harsh. You get in line, you stay in line, you look like everyone, you act like everyone. Like, in the years that I am supposed to just be a regular teenager doing regular exploratory teenage things, all of that was stripped away from me, and just sedate her and make her conform is the tactic that they took with me. I remember once when I was able to talk to my dad. Technically, I wasn't supposed to have been able to use the phone for the first 30 days that I was there, but my dad had a quadruple bypass or a double bypass, or so. It was a major heart surgery issue thing going on, and so they were going to let me talk to my dad under those circumstances. And I remember it had to be on speakerphone, and my dad's like, "Well, how are you doing in there?" And the counselor that was in the room with me, I remember her just shooting me this horrible look, like, "What are you going to tell them? You better say the right thing," you
Yeah.
know? And I'm like, "It's okay. I'm adjusting." And yeah, I got that nod of approval. Okay, that was the right answer. I'm not going to be in trouble. And then it was a hard adjustment. The adult men in there were kind of creepy.
In what way? In what way?
Wanting to sit very close to us, just like 20 something, 30 something year old men, way too interested in the troubled party life of the teenage girls. I want to say that they stuck me in a treatment facility getting treatment with men that were the reason I was needing treatment to begin with, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
You
So
know?
like a lot of grooming behavior, a lot of like unwanted touching, stuff like that.
Not so much the touching, because the staff was pretty strict about maintaining a space. There's got to be a bubble, but very up in your face, really close when you're talking, uh, just uncomfortable things like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, and so it was okay until one of the guys called a game on me, and I don't know if other programs use this specific formula, but it's like drilled into my head, and they'll just find any way to tear you down, and they'll call a game and get everybody in on it. And the rules of the game: no violence, no threats of violence, no mood altering chemicals. What's said in the game stays in the game. All participation is required. Confront with care. Jennifer, why are you wearing a shirt with ruffles on it? Why do you think you're so special that you can't just wear a plain t-shirt like everybody? I mean, just little nitpicky things like that. And I didn't feel like I was getting any help. I felt like I was just being beaten down and made worse, you know? And I told them that night after they pulled a game on me, I don't want to be here. You need to contact my caseworker and find another place for me to be placed, because this is not going to work out for me. I don't want to be here. And they said, well, the doors aren't locked and nobody's forcing you to stay here. So if you want to leave, leave. So I went up to my room and I packed a bag that I could carry and I left. And then they reported me as a runaway. So then I had the police looking for me, and I contacted my caseworker on the emergency hotline because it was after hours, and I let her know I'm at a friend's house and I'm safe and I didn't run away. They told me if I didn't like it there that I could leave, and I don't like it there, so I left. And you've got to find somewhere for me. Can I just stay here for the weekend, and then Monday I'll come to court? Whatever we need to do, I can't go back there. No, that's not going to work out, and it'll look better in your favor if you go back. So I went back. And my punishment for having left after they told me that it was okay to leave was to sit in a non-functioning telephone booth, like one of those old-fashioned ones with the doors, the accordion doors that slide open, and the little wooden bench, and no light, and no other kind of accommodations, just in that small, tiny place, no room to move. I sat in that phone booth from the time I went back uh, Friday night when I left until I was ready to go to court Monday morning. And during the course of that weekend, there were a couple of meals where they forgot to bring me up food. Oh, we forgot you were in there.
Forgot.
Um,
Forgot.
I
Yeah.
I had to go to the bathroom so bad that I had an accident in my pants because nobody came to check on me to take me to the bathroom, and I couldn't leave this phone booth unescorted, and I was already in trouble. I wasn't a troublemaking kid. I just wanted to feel a little bit more normal like the other kids, because that was always a real struggle for me.
Yeah.
Um, but I wasn't starting fist fights. I wasn't stealing things and setting things on fire or running around with gangs and buying guns and doing drugs and stuff like that. Because at this point in my life, I had only tried smoking marijuana a couple of times. But those 2 or 3 times, they kept saying to me, in multiple places, well, it was a bigger problem than that. It was a bigger problem than that. And I just thought, okay, maybe it was a bigger problem. I'm a kid. I don't know. And maybe they're seeing something I'm not seeing. And maybe it was a bigger problem. But I also, looking back on it, and now that I understand more, I have to think too, maybe they just needed it to be a bigger problem so that their Medicaid or whatever insurance would cover it, because I don't know if they'd throw back a kid that really doesn't have a problem, but they wanted to keep taking my parents' money too. So just a whole lot of bureaucracy going on, and I'm not really sure how to make heads or tails of any of it, right? Um, so I get out of the phone booth, I go to court, and they decide that, well, the only thing we can do for her at this point is send her to Geneva for a 90-day evaluation. And then we'll see what might be more appropriate for her, if something is open at that time too, or if we know when she's going to be getting out, we may be able to hold a spot for her closer to the end of that 90-day period. So then they ship me off to Geneva, and Geneva, you get there, you don't even get to wear your own clothes, not your own underwear. They give you 2 or 3 pairs of underwear and socks and a couple of t-shirts and some pants and an outfit to go to church on Sunday.
Of course.
Of course.
Does he need that?
Oh man. So
Unbelievable.
I get there, and again, it's a lot of busy work. We're scrubbing the hallways on hands and knees with a towel and a toothbrush for the really grungy spots, and one to wipe it off with, and our little bucket. And when you go to the bathroom, if it's a number 1, you get 5 squares of toilet paper. For a number 2, you can get 8.
Yeah.
To this day, I count that, and so I don't know if this gets talked about a lot, but from a young woman's perspective, it's definitely was a really traumatizing thing that impacted my view towards my body and what it does naturally for the rest of my life. But the amount of sanitary napkins that you are allotted during your menstrual cycle was not sufficient to contain what I needed.
Yeah.
And so then you get in trouble for that too. You get locked in your rooms at night. One time I had to go to the bathroom so bad, and I couldn't get a staff member to come let me out of my room to go to the bathroom. So I just had to shit in my toilet. Poop. I'm sorry if you edit that out.
No, it's totally fine. Totally
I
fine.
pooped. Anyway, and I didn't know what else to do. And then, of course, I got in trouble for that. And it's
Yep.
like,
Of course.
why am I getting in trouble for a natural bodily function that none of you came to assist me with? Just unlocking my door to let me walk down to the bathroom. Why am I being in trouble for a naturally bodily function that I have absolutely no control over whatsoever? As far as menstruating and having to use more, and check your problem for not maintaining personal hygiene and bleeding through on your pants. Well, no, I'm provide me with what I need to not do this.
Yeah.
Teach me how to not do this. Don't give me the minimal and then punish me for not meeting the requirement. And so for the rest of my life, like, it was, every month was very traumatizing to me, making sure, do I have enough? I can't go out in public. What if this happens? I mean, it was just really, really bad, for up until the day I had my hysterectomy. So That is a weird way that they sink into the psyche and they just settle in and they stay there. And you wouldn't think just like a normal, mundane, average, normal thing like that everybody does uh, would be so traumatizing. And it never should be. It never should have. There was an episode we were going swimming, so they were letting us have tampons instead of pads, and one of the girls left the pad in the bathroom. But everybody thought it was me because I had had the incident where I bled through, and it just must be her. And it wasn't me, but I had to go in and clean it up anyway, because how could I prove it wasn't me? So then I need to check my inconsiderate to others' problems for not properly disposing of my sanitary napkin.
Yeah.
And it doesn't do any good to argue, because at 15 years old you have no ability to stand up for yourself. I had no say over any of the medication that I was on, and some of that medication has caused me lifelong consequences. I have some severe gastrointestinal digestive issues from a lot of the medications that I was on, thinning hair, uh, just a whole bunch of things that are the results from, I believe, years of them making me take those medications. And uh, when you eat there, you had to eat everything. Like, so they would serve you like a spoon of corn, and there'd be that little juice from the corn left at the bottom of the bowl, but you have to soak that up with a biscuit or a roll, or just drink it if you didn't save it, because nothing can be left, and like years later down the road I'm looking back at that and I'm like, well, now I am a habitual overeater. I'm overweight. It I mean, these were just like unhealthy things that we were doing. But also it was lagging us down. I gained a bunch of weight and I got in trouble on the drive back. And they had me in full around the ankle, chain up the front, my hands full shackles, everything for the ride to and from Geneva. But I gained so much weight there that I couldn't button and zip my jeans up when I left. And so I just left them like that because I didn't know what else to do. So now I have on my record, and at my next placement that I'm about to discover, I have been labeled as a sexual deviant for trying to entice older men into lewd acts to gain favor, when really it's just they fattened me up and I couldn't zip my jeans up anymore, you
Yeah.
know. So I leave Geneva and I go back to the youth center, which is like jail. Like, it's like county for underage kids. So I'm at the youth center. And then the next place that they're going to put me is Nebraska Children's Home. And this is
And that's like a foster home, correct?
similar, yes. It operates more like a foster home and less like a therapeutic center. For a lot of kids in the foster care system, if there's not a foster home available, or if the kids are younger, like newborns, babies, they had cribs there and stuff too. I can't remember if there were any babies when I was there, but I know that we had accommodations for them. But it's the Nebraska Children's Home is where a lot of the younger kids would go until they were adopted.
Okay.
That was kind of the place for the kids they knew weren't going to be going back home.
So like
You
a
know,
transitional type thing.
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
But for me and the 3 or 4 other girls there my age, it was our transitional place into either you're going to go to court and it's going to be okay for you to go back home. And a couple of the girls did that. And then myself and a couple of the other girls there with me, we just ended up hanging out there until they found another place for us to go.
Okay.
I did have a little bit more freedom there. And then along with that freedom came, well, of course, I was still in trouble from having left Nova, ran away from Nova. So I was still on juvenile probation, and I had to drug test. And I had already heard stories, though, about how to get around those. So even though I wouldn't have passed a drug test at the time, I did. So that was a little less trouble that I was in. But on one of my home visits, I went for a walk and went and bought a bag from a friend and hid it in my room, and it was found. So that was a little bit more trouble I was getting into at that
A
point.
bag of weed or?
Weed, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So once again, I am in trouble for marijuana. And now I'm going to go to summer school just because that's somebody's going to supervise me at summer school during the day, and then I'll get off the bus back to the Children's Society home, and then that I'll have supervision there. So it's like, I guess I did need the credits because I had missed a lot of school, and they were going to try to get me back into school. But that's another thing. I had gotten scholarships in the works, and I'd been applying to different colleges, and I was going to go to the Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising. I wanted to do all of these great things, but at the age of 15, once I became a ward of state, way back in the psychiatric ward, they refused. And I asked repeatedly, please, can I just go to school? And they refused to enroll me in a school because we don't know what school district you'll be in next month. You're in a temporary place. It's not permanent. We're not sure where you'll be when the school year starts. So, like, I kind of feel like I got ripped off of my education, and I would have been a very different woman sitting here today if somebody would have just stood up for me.
I feel that.
Can I take a moment?
Yeah, go ahead. Take your time.
Okay, so up until this point, things were just difficult, but not, it hadn't gotten to the point where it was going to get before I finally left the system. I became an emancipated minor. So I go through the summer. It's a little bit after the school year. From Nebraska Children's Home, I go to Utaholly Girls Group Home. I grew up in what at the time in Nebraska was considered an affluent neighborhood. My parents weren't rich, but they had good credit and we lived well. This group home was in a pretty rough part of town. I was the only white girl in the group home. I was also one of the only kids that was able to leave and go home for a visit with my parents on the weekend because I wasn't in there because my parents neglected me or abused me and things like that. I was in there for my own behavior.
Did they resent? Did you feel like they resented you for that?
Oh, I didn't just feel it. They left me evidence that they resented me. When I was gone on my visits, The first couple of times I had like some Guess jeans with the triangle on the back pocket, and they had cut all of those triangles off. And so then it's like, okay, I'm just going to have to pack up everything and take it with me. And then I would come home at the end of the weekend to my mattress being soaked in urine,
Yeah.
almost as if like they had taken turns. And I brought this up to the staff, and well, we'll put a plastic cover on your mattress. We'll switch you bedrooms. But like nothing was ever more than a band-aid. This is just temporary. You're not going to be here long anyway. Deal with it, you know? Um, so I don't even remember how long I was there. I think I was there. The limit for that was 45 or 60 days. So I wasn't there, but for a month and a half, a couple of months. And then I go to the foster home. And the foster home was going to be, in my mind, I'm thinking a better experience. It's actually a home environment. There'll be other kids. Maybe I'll make friends. These girls won't be peeing on my bed every weekend anymore. I just was really hoping it would be a good experience. And my first night there, it was a single foster mom running the foster house. And the girls had the bedrooms upstairs and the boys had the bedrooms downstairs. And her bedroom was like in the middle of the hallway. So at night we couldn't sneak up and downstairs to go visit each other because her bedroom was right there. We would have had to sneak by her. And so I get there and I'm feeling hopeful that this might be a better place for me. And the foster mom is leaving and going to go out on a dinner date with this new guy that she has started dating. And so the kids are there alone and we're all on the honor system. And even though I wasn't supposed to use the phone for the first 30 days that I was there again, um, nobody was really around. And so I went and I used the phone to try to call a friend of mine. And right as I'm ending the phone call and hanging up, one of the other foster kids comes from around the corner and he's like, you're not supposed to be on the phone. And I'm like, I just needed to call somebody and let them know that I'm safe because they haven't heard from me for months. And
Wow.
and he followed me into my bedroom, and that quickly became a situation of quid pro quo.
Yeah.
And he didn't penetrate me, but I remember him just laying on top of me and rubbing really violently on me until he was done. And now he's not going to tell the foster mom that I was on the phone because I
Yeah.
let him do that. And what I thought would be a better, safer situation quickly proved to be otherwise, because the foster mom was never there. We
Yeah.
were paychecks. Here's a carton of cigarettes. I'll get you another one next week.
Yep.
And that was it. And I ended up at this point now I'm 16 years old, and I am dating a guy in the neighborhood who is 21, almost 22, and it's fine. She let me spend the night down there. That's fine.
Yeah.
Um, there was just not no kind of guidance, nothing. And the situation differs because the essay was coming from other boys there in the foster home. It wasn't the staff member because the staff member was never around.
Yeah.
And that wasn't the only instance things like that happened to me there in the foster home. And I was in that foster home for almost a year. I finally had enough and I got into a fist fight and I punched a kid and I grabbed a bag and I left. And a couple months later, I found out that I was pregnant while I was a runaway. So I turned myself in and I went to court and had myself become an emancipated minor because I was pregnant. And at that point, I found a place to live. I was staying at a friend's apartment. I had gotten a job. I was doing okay for a pregnant 17-year-old kid, you know. So that brings me to the next stage of how horribly wrong these systems are. This is tough.
Take your time. You're doing great.
I'm going to talk about my son. I loved him. I love him every day I think about him. I didn't know how to be a good mom. I didn't know who I was because I was only 18 years old when I had him. And those years I should have been exploring and finding out who I am, what kind of person do I want to be. I didn't get that.
Yeah.
And so after a year of really struggling, and I think I had some postpartum depression going on, but this was like back in 1993 then. It wasn't a thing. I was just a bad mom.
Yeah.
I decided to give my son up for adoption. And kept in contact with the lady and had pictures and everything. And then she passed away. Before she passed away, though, he had already had some behavioral problems, and there was probably some genetics and mental illness that had to do with that. They said that I was bipolar and manic depressive and ADHD, and as an adult, they were able to place me on the autism spectrum. As a kid, I was just a weird kid that needed more medication, you know.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't drooling, so I'm not in that category. There's just got to be something wrong with her, you know. But
Yeah.
I imagine my son had a lot of the similar problems, and he ended up in Boys Town, and then he got kicked out of Boys Town because he was having some aggression problems there. And
what is Boys Town for the audience that might not know?
Boys Town is a Catholic run. It's not even a treatment center. It is, in all actuality, its own little town. It's got its own police department, its own fire department, its own mail. It's just this gated community for wayward kids. In the middle, on the outskirts of Omaha. And to be sent to Boys Town, kind of like you were at the end of the rope there. I remember during my stint, they were like, where are we going to put her? Where are we going to put her? And so they came to me and they asked me, will you write a letter to Boys Town and ask Boys Town if you can come live at Boys Town, tell them that you want to live there. And I said, I don't want to live there. Yeah. And I kind of put that in the letter, and I didn't get accepted into Boys Town, you know. So he ended up going from Boys Town to Epworth Village in York, Nebraska.
Okay.
I think it's ran under a different name now, but it's still Epworth Village. And even though it is not government supported, it is funded from donations and ran by the Methodist Church of York, Nebraska. It is the go-to for troubled teens when Boys Town, the end of the road, and they got to go just one step further down the road. They're not quite at the end yet. They're those kind of behavioral problems, you know. So my son ended up there. I think he had only been there maybe around a year. And I had had contact with his adopted mom up until the point when she passed away. And now here it is, September 28th of 2011. And I've started getting my life back together. I'm living out in Oregon. I am finally not a criminal for self-medicating. I can safely acquire cannabis now. And that got me out of the black market from other drugs that I had discovered looking for a bag of weed. And things are doing good, and I wanted to find my son.
Yeah.
I got online to look for him. I found his obituary.
Wow.
He had hung himself out. And he's not the only kid that killed themselves out there.
It happens to a lot of children, a lot of people. It's a lot more
There was
prevalent.
another incident out there where a 15-year-old girl, and this was in the paper, they didn't mention the name or anything, but 15-year-old girl got pregnant supposedly by one of the staff members. And like I said, they, I believe, have changed their name, but they're still up and running.
Yep. Under a new name. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's what they
If
do.
these kids are so troubled, why was he left long enough unsupervised to be able to kill himself? And it may have been accidental, but it may not have been either.
Oh no, I don't really know that. Like, I extremely doubt that it was an accident. I really doubt it was an accident.
Yeah.
That's what they're gonna say till their dying day, because they don't have any integrity or backbone. These people have no fucking morals. They have no. Not all of them. There are some like people that just got caught up in it and were brainwashed, but for the most part, these are bad individuals that probably already had a record before they started working there. And you know, I don't doubt for a second that they did something, regardless of if it was them just outright killing them or something happened and like an accidental, what you want to call it, where they didn't mean to kill him according to them, but they ended up killing him and then accident, you know what I mean? Something like that. I could see that very easily happening.
Well, that was in 2011, September 28th of 2011, when Devin died. And almost to the date, just like within a few days or a few weeks or something, a year later, another young man out there, I believe it was a boy, killed himself and was found hanging from a swing set on the campus.
Unbelievable. Like, why a swing set? You know what I mean? To me, that rings like he was placed there. Either
I
he
just
was placed
remember,
there, you know?
you know, yeah, like I remember anytime and I went into numerous places in the few years that I was a ward of state,
Yeah.
and the very stringent rules and policies about contraband. I couldn't have sweatpants unless I took the drawstring out, but then the pants don't stay up. That's inappropriate. Can't wear
Yeah.
them. No shoelaces.
Yeah.
No. Fuck, they wouldn't even let me bring in the book The Exorcist to read. They let me have
Yeah.
The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, but I couldn't read The Exorcist. I mean, but it's just like
Wow.
they were so stringent about what they would and wouldn't allow. I couldn't even have a cassette tape in there because I might take the tape out and hurt someone with it. Where are these kids getting these tools? What
Yeah, are they being another thing is, are they being offered these tools to end their lives in a moment? Are they breaking these people down, and then in a moment of weakness, they would say, or in a moment of just like, being at a very low where you just give up completely, and they give you that tool, hey, you should just end it, it'll be, or whatever was it, something like that? There's so many things it could be, but I do not buy for a second accident. I don't.
I
I
the
don't.
two the two suicides and the pregnancies would have happened not within the same year, but close enough that those kids were there long term. They would have known each other.
Yeah,
And
for
it's
sure.
always been in the back of my mind. Did my son and somebody else's son see something or know something or
Yep. That too. That could easily happen too. They might have
and
seen something.
as a kid that was there, you have no rights. You
Yeah.
you you don't get to choose the medication that you're on. You don't get to choose when to make a phone call. You don't get to choose who does and does not get information about you. Um, you know, so I know, like, from having been there as a kid, how these people run these programs. And then 18 years later, to find out that my son turned up dead in one of these institutions. And on the surface, it's very easy to just say, kid was troubled and he took
Yeah.
his own life. That's
Yeah.
very sad.
Yeah.
Those are words coming from other parents that didn't live through that experience themselves as a teenager.
Yeah.
I can't help but to feel like there's something very bad going on out there. Something very bad. And York, Nebraska is out in BFE. I mean,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
if you wanted to run away from there, you've got a town, a population of less than 1,000. You can't even fart without your
Yeah.
neighbor talking about it.
Yeah.
And if you want to try to get out of the town, you got 50 miles of cornfields in every direction.
Yeah.
And the sheriff, state troopers, somebody is cousin, brother-in-law, uncle with Joe Bob that works at the place I mean, there's no escape.
Yeah. No, it's by
It
that. It's that way by design.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And there
Yeah.
are, I think, some very sick, troubled adults that accept those jobs to take advantage of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. And I think it's very. I think a lot of it is extremely sophisticated too. I think that there's certain groups of people that might also infiltrate these organizations, and just for the sole intent of preying on children and preying on teenagers. People that have no autonomy and can't say no. Like, and just it's just to them, it's the perfect scenario for a predator. You know what I mean?
And
It's one of these places.
what good did it to speak up and say anything to try to get help anyway?
Yeah.
We're already labeled as delinquents. We're already labeled as troubled youths. We are not to be trusted. We are liars and manipulators and thieves and hoodlums. And why would anybody want to believe us? So it just seemed like, and once I got into the system, it was so incredibly difficult to get out of the system, legal trouble, things like that, you know. There was never enough medication to sedate me. Eventually, you either crumble or you just grow numb and accept the fact that this is how I'm going to be treated and there's nothing I can do about it.
Yep.
And I felt that then as a 15-year-old child in these institutions. And I have felt that way a lot of times as an adult when I should have given myself permission to stand up for myself, and I didn't. So there's no question, there was no therapeutic value to any of this bullshit that I went through. It didn't make me a productive member of society. It didn't make me a college graduate and a success. And one day I just looked in the mirror and I said, I'm not going to be the woman who couldn't heal. And I started doing what I wanted to do. I started dyeing my hair purple or green or whatever color. I started dressing like how I wanted to dress. I started getting tattoos. I started learning who I wanted to be. But it's still, even though it was a beautiful journey of self-discovery, it was tainted because I was shaping who I wanted to be based on what I had already gone through, you know?
Yeah. Yep. Do you hear that like loud, like, do you hear that buzzing sound right now? Do you hear a buzzing?
I do not.
Okay, thank the higher power, you know. There's some person upstairs that decided now is the perfect time to use a power tool. So that's great. But it happens.
There's always somebody screwing us, right?
Yeah, it just never fails, you know. That's just life, you know. It's just So how much time total did you spend in these places, like all together? Like, if you how many years?
I want to say it was around, well, I didn't spend Christmas there, but it was maybe around January or February from when I was 15 years old until December when I was 17. Okay, so I was running through the gamut for a couple of years.
Okay.
Even after that, though, I still continued to have some legal problems up until my mid-20s.
Okay. Do you want to go into that a little bit? What happened after you got out of those places?
Well, I was driving a car with somebody who had shoplifted, and it was like a CD box set, and I took it to one of those disc go round places and tried to sell it, and the record store had been like, hey, be on the lookout for this. And so I got put on probation for that. And then I got myself, because I was only 19 at the time, so I got myself off of probation by going to Job Corps. And I was 20 when I left that program. I didn't get to complete everything that I wanted to complete. Like, I got to do the preliminary stuff, but I didn't walk out of there with my vocational degree or whatever, because I tested positive for marijuana.
Of course.
Which has been a theme in my life, right? So then after that, there was a incident a few years later. I was in my mid-20s, and my boyfriend had stolen a car, and it would have been his third strikeout, but I had a clean record. So I took the rap for him, and I said that I'm the one who stole the car. And I got diversion, and I completed it, a slap on the wrist. And then I don't have any felony convictions or anything like that. If I did, I wouldn't be able to have the job I have today. So fortunately, that is one thing that worked out for me. But yeah, so that was a thing for about a year and a half. And then after the son I gave up for adoption that committed suicide, I had more children, and the drugs and the probation and everything. And just growing up in these situations, like, nobody ever taught me how to be a good mother. I didn't know how to be a good mother, and I wasn't, and my sister ended up getting custody of my children. So that was something involved with, again. And in the state of Nebraska, I had to do like a counseling thing, and sit down and talk with somebody, understanding all of the rights that I was giving away before I signed the papers and everything. And oddly enough, that meeting was with the lady who was still running, and who was running back then, the Nebraska Children's Home.
Oh,
So
wow.
that whole system came full circle on me right there too. Like I said, once they got me in the system, it was like very difficult for me to get back out of it. So it nothing major, anything like that. I never had like drug charges or anything. Just the one big charge I had, I brought on myself because I was trying to protect my ex-husband.
Yeah.
He was my husband at the time. But I ended up moving out of Nebraska, and I have never done better. I call Omaha Omaha.
Yeah.
Because anytime I've ever tried to go back there to live again, I just get sucked right back into, you run into the same people, the same job. It's not, I don't know what it is about Omaha. The state of Nebraska, I cannot thrive in. So now, after having lived in Oregon, I moved back to my home state where I was born, and I still have a lot of family here. And they do have legalized medical and recreational marijuana. And I work in that industry.
Oh, nice. What do you do?
I'm a bud tender right now. I've actually gone through the GA course, and in May I'll be going out to California to take my exam, and I will be a certified GA,
Nice.
which is kind of the equivalent of a wine sommelier, but for cannabis.
Yeah, I'm very familiar. I've been involved in the industry since medical cannabis here in Washington, like 2012. I worked in the industry for like 6 years, and then that, like the farmers markets and stuff, if you know what those are. I
Yeah.
just had them here in Seattle where they like back before it went wreck. Like it was literally like you could get seeds there, you could get clones there, you could buy weed there, you could buy concentrate there, you could fucking talk game with people about methods of growing. Like you could buy soil, you could buy lights, buy glassware,
It,
anything. So I
it
worked there.
the environment that I had from around 2011, 2012, also in Oregon, it was kind of like a underground flea market for the
Yep,
pot world.
exactly. Yep.
Um, so I started making a specific edible that
Nice.
people loved, and also in the process of trying to get that legitimate so that we can start packaging it and putting it in dispensaries for sale. But I make an infused beef jerky.
Oh, that sounds dank. You should send me some. That sounds fire.
Yeah, it's pretty good. I love it. My clients really have enjoyed it. I get such a great satisfaction though, because it's not a remedy for everybody, but for me it is really done a great job replacing a lot of the psychiatric medication that I was on and probably shouldn't have been on, but it does what I need it to do, you know. And every time they're like, we've got to keep her in the system, uh and she's not causing any problems this month, so what else can we come up with? Well, she's a pot smoker. It
Yeah,
always came down to I got in trouble for weed, and a few times I
yeah.
had been smoking weed. I did get rightfully so, but I just couldn't think of a bigger middle finger to send out to everybody that I had to deal with as a teenager, being in trouble for it. And now I'm a pretty successful adult in that industry, and it feels good. It
Nice.
feels,
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, it feels good that I have the ability to make that choice for myself too. And it's not just we don't know what to do with her. She's angry about something. Just keep shoving more pills down her throat. Just sedate her. Like I can't, from those years in there as a teenager, I can't remember anything therapeutic that I learned from any of that. It was just years of sedation. And there's other abuses and things. It wasn't, I was sitting talking with my boyfriend about something the other day, and I was like, yeah, I'm weird about that because when I was at Geneva, we started talking about something, and I realized, I told him, I said, I didn't even remember that until we had this conversation, you know,
Yeah.
and it was something stupid about pushing my chair in, and I didn't do it, and I ended up having to like scrub the bathroom floors with a freaking toothbrush to clean them and stuff, you know. It was just something ridiculous like that. But it's like even little things like that just trickle in from time to time. And it's like, wow, sometimes I don't even realize what an impact some of those places had on me. And it was a couple years back. I went to go stay with one of my family members because of COVID and just some, weird time for me. And my room is really messy and it's really cluttered, but it's just in my head. Everything I own has to be here in this room with me.
Yeah. No, I feel that.
I don't want it to get stolen or peed on or anything. It's just, if it's here, I can monitor it.
Yeah. No, I feel you.
Yeah. So.
Um, Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say the places, though, like I had said at the beginning of this, that are run by the state, like, and the state sends so many of their wards. I don't even begin to know how to get those places shut down, and unless we really start exposing what's really happening there. And I think as children, they weren't going to listen to us. As teenagers, they weren't going to listen to us. Maybe now, as adults, and with some of these videos and the documentaries and the proof coming forward to support our claims, maybe now we can do something, because kids just shouldn't have to go through, not at the hands of other kids, not at the hands of the adults that are supposed to be in charge of the situation, you know. I wish there was a way. I wish there was a way I could do more investigating into my son's death and the circumstances around it, but those records, those places are so locked tight. I tried getting a lawyer for a wrongful death suit, and because he was a ward of state at the time of his death, I didn't have any rights as a parent to sue
Have
them
you
for
tried?
wrongful death.
Have you tried trying to get in contact with any of the people that were there with him in that school during that
Um,
time?
no, maybe now as adults, but again, I how would I find out their names?
Yeah, right.
Because, you know, as teenagers, their records were protected.
Yeah,
I imagine some of the ones that did make it out of there probably got as far away from York, Nebraska that they possibly could. And if it's such a small town, if I go back in there and start poking holes and stirring the pot, people that used to work there or whatever, well, not to sound paranoid or anything, but how do I know I'll make it out of the cornfield?
that's not. I don't think that's sounding paranoid. I think that's sounding like aware, because these people, a lot of these people are at the very top of these things. They're very wealthy, and they all they care about is power and money and influence, and forcing their power and influence on people.
Yeah.
Um,
But if anybody sees this that was in Epworth Village
yep,
in York,
about to say that.
Nebraska from 2010, 2011, that's the year my son passed away. If you want to reach out to me, uh, I'm here. If you were a staff member at Epworth Village and you have more information to help fill in some of the blanks of this story, or if you don't want to be the whistleblower, bring the information to me. I will blow that whistle. I don't care. I've already been the bad guy, according to these institutions. I'll be the bad guy, you know. But yeah, I don't know how else to get it out there, but I'd like to know what happened to my son Devin.
Understandably, for sure. Yeah, so if anybody knows anything, like, say something. You can even come, like, it would be, I think it's better to just, like, say your name, but even if you're just anonymous, just call in a freaking tip. Like, call in a freaking tip and just say, look, I saw this, I know this happened. I feel like that's kind of a weak way to go about it, but you know, if that's what it takes to get you to fucking speak up about what you saw, then do it. Because
Yeah.
some people need closure. Some people can't move on until they have closure. So that's a
It's
big
not
part.
it's not just that, but no parent should ever have to bury their child,
No.
especially sending them to a therapeutic community with the anticipation that they're going to emerge this healed, enlightened, balanced individual, and they die. That's not therapy. That is not therapy.
Yeah.
There's and I've seen the meme, and it really hits hard too. for us that have been in these programs and we're calling ourselves survivors, survivors only happen after a trauma.
Yeah.
Survivors don't happen after therapy, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Okay. Well, what was the worst thing you saw or heard about in all of these places? I know your son's suicide supposedly was definitely one of them. Probably.
absolutely. Um, I would have to say when I was back in the psychiatric ward when I was 15, there was a boy on the ward. We were kind of sweet on each other. And one night we thought that we were alone. So we started making out. And we got pretty into it. And one of the staff members was in the room, had walked into the room while we were making out, but they didn't stop us and they didn't leave right away. I was in another place. Well, there was a short time between, it was either between Nova and Nebraska Children's Home, or it was between, Nebraska Children's Home and Utaholly Group. See, I've blocked a lot of these out.
Yeah.
Utaholly Group Home. For, I want to say 2 or 3 weeks, I was in Epley Treatment Center, which
Yeah.
I don't think even exists anymore. It's a hospital, or maybe it's under a different name or something right now, Hope Recovery or something like that, but Epley Treatment Center. And I am a poet and a writer, and I've always done that. And there was a staff member, and I was 16 at the time, and he was younger, but I don't know how old, maybe around 24 to maybe 27. I think he was like still under the age of 30, somewhere in that age group. And nothing physical ever happened between me and him. But he would come in, after bedtime and everything, and did you write anything? Can I read your poetry? And we'd sit and talk about it. And at the time, I just thought this is really cool, and he's a cool guy, and I'm getting attention, and this is nice. And um, you know, you should write about this. You should check out this band and listen to this band when you get out of here and can listen to the radio again. And some of the topics, uh, like he had suggested that I start reading the beatniks like Allen Ginsberg and William S. Burroughs, Jack Kerouac, and they're wonderful, and they really have shaped me as a writer. Um, but being introduced to some of the sexually explicit content at the age of 16 by a staff member was probably not the most appropriate thing that staff member should have been doing,
Oh
you
yeah, it
know?
sounds like textbook grooming to me.
Yeah, and I think in my life there was a lot of that going on. Um, because as particularly at Epley, everybody else there was an adult. I was the only teenager there. And again, it came down to um they had nowhere else to put me. This was a temporary thing until this spot opened up for me. a lot of that going on during those 2 years. Well, until I made it into the foster home. But I remember there was a man that I was in treatment with, and he wasn't a staff member there, but he had given me his phone number, and I never called him. And then on a visit home a few months later to my parents, my mom was like, "Oh, you were in treatment with so and so, and he called the other day just wanting to know if you were okay, and he said that he'd like to take you out to lunch, and if you wanted to go to an AA meeting with him, he'll come pick you up." And I'm thinking, I didn't even give this guy my phone number. Like, how he remembered my last name and looked up my parents' phone number in the old-fashioned phone book that you could flip
Yeah.
through. He actually looked up my parents' phone number to get a hold of me, and I'm positive that was just a predatory event waiting to happen. You know,
Definitely.
but it's not weird. These adults are just trying to help you. You're
Yeah.
groomed to accept it.
Yep. Indoctrinated.
Yeah.
Yep. Did you ever get into any hard drugs after you got out of these places at any point in your life? Deal with
Oh,
any addiction?
yeah, absolutely. The overeating and the weight gain and everything that happened when I was at Geneva uh, spilled over into my life. And as soon as I discovered methamphetamines and my eating disorder were best friends.
Yeah.
Absolutely. That being on meth has a big, everything in the world to do with why I didn't get to keep custody of the other children I had after I had had my son that I gave up for adoption. I've dabbled with other things. I sold acid for a while. And I've eaten mushrooms and it just pills. I've had a couple of near calls with overdoses with pills. It's what I knew, you know. I don't want to be mad. I don't want to be upset. I want to sit still and shut up. I'm just going to keep sedating myself. And,
Yeah.
but again, that's the therapeutic approach that they took towards me. So that's what I had learned,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Also, your whole life being on prescription medications, you were already indoctrinated into you need to be on something because something's wrong with you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
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 Um, if you could, or hold on, do you hear about or know about or anything like that about anybody disappearing from any of these places and never being found, or just being there one day and just not being there the next day?
So that did happen at Nova.
Okay.
I vaguely remember there was a boy that came in, they were getting him checked in. Saw him kind of shuffling along down to the breakfast line. And then, well, this place just isn't going to work out for him. He's not there anymore.
And he's just not there anymore. They don't give
They're
an
just,
explanation.
yeah, they're just not there anymore. The places like Geneva and Utaholly and the youth center, when you exit, they go through everything that you're taking out, and they, with a fine tooth comb, make sure that you haven't written down any names or any phone numbers. Like, we were given specific, very, and I mean, I guess you think it's a threat then, because what are they going to do? You don't know any better. Um, but they made it seem like you could get in a lot of trouble for maintaining contact with people.
Yep, they don't want us thinking that.
Afterwards.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
don't want us. No.
I remember some names and I remember a few faces. I know that one of the girls that I was in the foster home with, from what I understand, a couple of months after she left the foster home, she killed herself. One of the boys that I was in the foster home with killed himself. One of the guys that I do remember from Nova, I believe, I don't know for certain because it wasn't confirmed that we were talking about the same Billy Joe Bob, you know. It might be the same guy, it might not. We weren't really sure, but if it is the same guy that I was talking about to this person, I think he killed himself too. Of course, up at the psychiatric ward, that was common. Kid flips out. I saw that at the age of 12 numerous times. And then again at the age of 15, somebody's having a bad day, getting in a fight with their parents. Their voice gets elevated. They want to pick up a notebook and their chair and throw it. And people are coming off the elevators from other floors of the hospital. Code 10, we're taking this kid down and injecting them, and they get strapped into this wheelchair with straps and off down the hallway, and sometimes they return to the ward and sometimes not.
Interesting.
A lot of that. But at the time, you know, it's like in the hospital, well, maybe they just took them to the padded room. Maybe they took them to solitary where the bad kids go. Like everything they threatened us with, like, if you act out, you're going to go into this room by yourself and we'll shove your food through a slot in the door, like jail. Everything's like jail, you know, like they just scared us or tried to scare us with this concept of no matter how bad you think it is, it could be worse because there's a place like jail for kids that you could go to. And I went there. And it was bad there too. We were more segregated from the boys, so there wasn't that kind of abuse going on, and our staff members on the girl side were only women, so there wasn't that kind of abuse going on. But there were favorites and there were favors, and you know, you just kind of want to keep to yourselves because teenage girls are brutal to each other, and if we're already in trouble sitting in the equivalent of what's jail, fist fights are going to happen every day, and they did. I caught a couple of them. I guess I just always chalked it up as par for the course, you know.
Yeah. When you were in that foster home and you were sexually assaulted, was it just that one person or were there multiple people that would come in and do that to you? Was it just that one person?
It was just that one person.
Okay.
The other two boys that she had in the home at the time, one was the younger brother of that person, and he was only maybe 7 or 8 years old. He wasn't in that point in his life. And the other one, actually I grew up and did meth with and was friends with until recently. He was into another persuasion. He wasn't into girls. So and that boy, I mean, he did other things too. Like if we were sitting in the living room watching TV, he'd come in and pick up the remote and change the channel. Why are you doing that? And he's like, because I'm the man. And so I get to make the decision. And smacked upside the head a couple of times for trying to argue with him about that, or, well, I know you did this, and so, if I don't get my way, I'm gonna rat on you, or I know that you were smoking pot because you smelled like it, and I know you skipped school because you weren't on the bus on the way home from school. I mean, he was just really looking for any opportunity he had. And even though he was the only boy that was doing it, I'm pretty certain that I wasn't the only girl he was doing that with.
Okay.
I think the girl that I ended up getting into a fist fight with when I ran away from the foster home, I think it might have been happening to her too.
Okay. And was it just abuse, or was there ever like any pictures taken or like video taken of any of that you know of?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Okay. I know it probably sounds like a weird question, but my brain, I've done a lot of deep research into a lot of this stuff, and so my brain kind of goes to certain areas when I'm trying to like piece together certain like possible connections in my brain, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, like in the hospital, there would have been video footage with the security cameras.
Mhm.
At the foster home, I don't know. Um, at Nova, I think I just remember like when we went in, they had to take a Polaroid picture of us.
Okay. Like an intake.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And when they did the skin check, and if we run away, here's the kid you're looking for, which is what they did with me. Is how I happen to know about, remember that. But um, like, but I remember like in the foster home and Nebraska Children's Home and places like that, where the security wasn't so strict,
Yeah.
um, there was certainly opportunity for things like that to happen. Like there were a couple times in the summertime, us girls wanted to put our bikinis on and go out in the backyard and try to suntan.
Yeah.
And there were male staff members around monitoring that, and what they were doing, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. If you can't tell, I just don't trust these people at all. These people have no reason that we should trust in them. And like, my thing is like, prove to me that you're not doing something bad, and then I'll trust you. I'm not just
Yeah,
going to blindly trust somebody that you're not doing something bad. Like, prove to me that you're not, or I'm just not. Because the other way around enables you to be taken advantage of, or things like that. So I'd rather you just show me who you really are, and then I'll think about trusting you. But
yeah.
these people, for the large percentage of these people that operate these places and do these kind of things, just like they're not good people. They're really not good people, and so I don't trust them.
They really aren't. And being a ward of state too, it wasn't just the staff members that you have to deal with. You are assigned a caseworker,
Yep.
and they're supposed to be your cheerleader, your mouthpiece, the one that stands up for you. Hey, this program isn't treating them right. We need to investigate, or you know, and it seemed I had a couple different caseworkers from start to finish too. And it seemed like the ones that really were on my side trying to be helpful didn't last long.
Of course, no, of
Like
course
they
not.
just disappeared too. I'm trying to get a hold of my caseworker, Tammy. I want to talk to my caseworker. And well, she's going to a different office, so you've got a different caseworker now.
Yeah,
Like,
convenient for them.
Well, and it's not, yeah, because it's not just the kids that would disappear. Staff would just disappear too sometimes.
Yeah, very, very strange. Okay.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. If you could go back in a time machine knowing what you know now and not go through any of these places, would you do it and why?
That's a tough question. As odd as it sounds, everything that happened to me back then is part of my journey. And it's made me the woman I am today. And I'm kind of a badass in some aspects if you think of what I've been through.
Yeah.
And the resiliency, maybe I could have saved myself a lot of heartache in some years, but I don't know who I would have been. I would have been a very different person. Maybe I would have gone to college and become a fashion designer, and I'd be still speaking French fluently, living in Europe, designing great shoes right now. I don't know. But I didn't. And I am healing, and I have done a lot of healing. I heal every day. So as horrific as those experiences were, I I can't discredit the value of some of the lessons that I've learned, you know. I wish that I had done things differently with my son. I wish that he had been kept out of those places and still be alive today.
Yeah.
I
Definitely.
wish that for every parent of a child who didn't come home alive from these programs. Um, but as far as me getting through it, it was such an integral, important part of my life. It happened to me during my formative years. I don't know how to imagine that not being a part of my formative years at this point, you know.
Okay. So you'd go through it again.
I would, but if I had the brain inside my head back then that I have today, there's definitely a lot more instances I would have said no. I would have stood up for myself, or I would have, I don't know, maybe just complied better and gotten through it quicker. I don't even know if I would have been able to, though, because like I said, for a lot of that time, they had me on so many medications.
Yeah.
I think at one point as a teenager, I was taking like 8 different pills a day. As a young adult, they at one point had me on like 13 different medications, and none of them helped me. That's the one thing I would have done differently. I would have said no to the medications.
Okay. And was there anything positive about your experience at all? It's totally fine if there wasn't. And what have you struggled with as the most as a result of these places?
Well, like I said, the positive thing is I am pretty street smart. I've got a pretty good head on my shoulder when it comes to creative problem solving. Um, so I guess that was a positive thing. It made me, I guess, maybe more self-sufficient, that I could take care of myself because nobody else is going to take care of me. But then on the other hand, that's the negative of being in these institutions also, is people are disposable. They're temporary. they're going to come in and out of my life. And I just can't trust that it's not going to be that way.
Yeah.
And then people of authority, very difficult to find trust in those situations also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And what have you struggled with the most as a result of being in these places, do you think? What do you think you struggle with the most?
Creating lasting bonds with people, building friendships,
Okay.
having good, healthy relationships with people.
Okay. And what was the hardest part about being there for you in these places, and how did you deal with it when you were there?
I missed my dad all the time. He was in bad health. I just talked to him or would visit him as much as I could. There were times where my mom wouldn't even come visit with me. It was only my dad that would come see me. My dad was great, but there was only so much that he could deal with his heart situation and the stress and everything. Um, how I dealt with it, I don't honestly know that I did really deal with it. Being moved around every 30 to 60 days has made it very difficult. Like, I'm not a homeowner, I'm still a renter, you know. I've moved around in my life quite a bit. Only here recently have I celebrated a 1 year anniversary of where I live right now. And like, I haven't done that very many times in my life. It's just, if something was a problem back then, well, we'll find another place to put her then. This place isn't working out. So I brought that into my adult life. If I don't like my neighbors making noise upstairs, or the guy across the street that keeps parking in front of my driveway or whatever, well, I'll just pack up and move. Stability has been a real challenge for me.
Okay.
Because I don't really feel like I don't know, things that other people, I guess, would see as like a basic need. It's just like, I know how to live without it. It's fine.
Okay. And what do you think would have helped you instead of being sent away? What do you think you needed?
For my mom and my sister to put the man that abused and molested me as a child in jail.
I feel that.
Just defend me, be on my side, and if the whole family could have healed together instead of just, we're having problems and it's Jenny's fault, send her away, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And how was the food in these places? Was it horrible? Was it bearable? Was some better than others? Was there some stuff you liked?
The hospital food was hospital food.
Yeah.
Pretty much everywhere else was. But the food at Nova, oh God, no. The first time I ever had to help them bread and fry catfish was there. And then come to find out, at least when I was in the program, it was like the food that they donate to food pantries, like it was going there, or
Yeah.
they were getting like the equivalent of vouchers or food stamps for everybody in there. And it was very a lot of it not food I had ever eaten before or would care to. I don't do fish to this day, particularly catfish. No. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I feel that.
And SpaghettiOs. Don't even bring a can of SpaghettiOs into my house. I will pick it up and throw it at your head. If I never smell Chef Boyardee again in my life, thank God. The youth center in Geneva was kind of like prison food. Um, like think of what like school cafeteria food is, and then for the most part in all these places we were about a notch below that.
Yeah, yep.
Interestingly enough, the only time the food got better was during the weekends and vacation weeks and summertime at the foster home, because then the foster mom didn't cook. We all had a night to cook. And I was working in a restaurant, and the older guy that I was dating in the neighborhood also worked there, and he was a cook, and he was teaching me how to cook. So, um, and I ended up doing the culinary program at Job Corps. So that actually is a good thing that came out of the foster home. I started wanting to learn how to cook, and now I'm making infused beef jerky. So
Hell yeah.
I picked up a lot of skill there, though. Learned a lot of good things from having to cook. Otherwise, when it wasn't us kids doing the cooking, it was hamburger helper and a variation of it every night.
Yep.
Extra cheese and spaghetti sauce, it's called Parmesan, and then let's throw mashed potatoes on top of it, and we'll just call that shepherd's pie. And really, it was just crap in a box.
Okay.
Or yeah.
uh, Knowing what you know now, is it your belief that the remaining schools could or even should or even could be fully regulated, or is it your belief that they should all be shut down?
The first part of my answer is the ones that are being run by religious organizations like York, like Epworth Village in York, Nebraska was run and funded by the Methodist Church, and these other places. The church ran places definitely need to be closed down.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think the incidents with the Catholic priests are a pretty good example of why those aren't working out well.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, and even on that line, like Boys Town is built around Father Flanagan.
Yep.
Uh, I think there should be no funding for any church affiliated campus until each and every predator, not only in the Catholic Church system, but in any church system, has been held accountable for and sentenced to jail or prison.
Yep.
Um, I don't feel like there should be any money going to churches that are actively hiding predators. And then to put those people in charge of places like this, no. There needs to be accountability.
Yeah. There really does. And there needs to be this thing where you can't just create your own city around something and then say you can't extradite. Have you heard that? That they like to have no extradition, like, and like you can't like be taken out of the forget what it's called, but like especially in Catholic religion, like the Pope, like they if he's charged, I've heard that like they can't even take him out of like the
The
um
Vatican.
yeah, yeah, exactly. They can't take him out of there. They can't extradite him. None of that. Like if he's charged with a crime because he's insulated by that religion, that shouldn't be a thing. That shouldn't be a thing.
Well,
Doesn't
and
matter.
that's another problem with Boys Town being its own city and having its own police
Yep.
and judicial system
Yep.
for its own city is there are things going on there that we will probably never see brought to light, because from the very top right down to the bottom it is covered up. I do know people that were in Boys Town. That might be an interesting topic for you for a show for another time. And I will talk to them and tell them to reach out to you if they're interested in maybe shedding some light on that, because
Hell yeah.
unlike
Yep.
these other campuses, Boys Town being its own separate entity as a township or a city, some of the horror stories I've heard coming out of that place.
Yeah, I have a lot of questions for the people in Boys Town. I have a lot of questions already just off the top of my head. Because I have some theories just like with what little I do know about it. But you know, I'm very, very curious. So yeah, if you can put me in contact with anybody from there, I'd love to have them on the show.
All right.
Yeah.
I'll reach out to the people I know and see what I can do for you.
Okay.
Because I would also like to know more about Boys Town. I know a few things. But I know that there's more that we don't hear about because it's their own police department. If people get arrested, we don't hear about it, or they just aren't getting arrested, or it's just too convenient that they don't have to answer to the same law enforcement and judicial system that the rest of the city does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I would be surprised. I would be shocked if they weren't doing anything more than that, you know? Like
Yeah.
it's almost like a definite, like they definitely are. Otherwise, why do you need your own police force? Why do you need all of your own people involved in that same cult? Because it is a cult that's like super culty, actually. Like we're gonna have like our, you know, even the police officers are involved. Like that's like the cultiest thing. That's like super culty. So like, why would you feel the need to have your own police department if you're not doing anything shady? Why? Why can't
And
you just have the regular
are
police?
are they there so that the troubled youth there have more law enforcement? Or I mean, like, who are the police there to serve? Why do they need to have their own law enforcement?
Yeah.
Are the kids really that big of a problem that you can't wait for the sheriff to come down the street? You need your own deputy right there on the spot?
Well, that's probably their excuse is, you know, these kids are unpredictable and, you know, so we need our own police force, you know, within this city to contain that because there's a chance that these people could go off the rails when in reality it's like even with mental illness, something sets off somebody to snap. Okay, it's not just like they just snap one day. You know, something triggers it. Whether it's a symbol, somebody saying something, you know, shit just building up and just them exploding. Like something causes it. It's not like they're just doing this for no fucking reason. So, like, there's just a lot of angles to it. It just wouldn't make sense to me that there's not anything shady going on. It just doesn't. It's not plausible to me. So.
And is it for tax purposes? Because they're already funded by a church, which should be tax free anyway. So yeah, it's just a lot of weird stuff going on. A lot.
Yeah.
And like I said, now that Nova is accredited, I would like to know how different it is from back in when I was there, and it was 1989 or 1990.
Yeah.
How different, how much has it changed? If it's accredited now, you know, are they still taking in teenagers? I mean, like, it shouldn't be that big of a deal for somebody to just say, hey, teenager, I want to check in on you and make sure that you're doing okay and that you feel safe here. But for some reason, it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're for certain not going to get that. Even if you were able to talk to the kid, you're certainly not going to get them alone away from other people and then be able to ask them the question. Where they
Yeah.
can't be influenced, where somebody can't make eye contact and, you know, say, you better keep your mouth shut, you know, like say this certain thing because these people are indoctrinated about what to say. You know what I mean? So in order to have an honest answer with somebody like that, you need to separate them from everybody there and get them like just one-on-one, just like, are you safe? Do you really feel safe here?
And
You need to actually tell me.
as a teenager, I didn't feel that even in the foster home. So I had mentioned I started dating a guy in the neighborhood, and I was 16 and he was almost 22. And so my foster mom wanted me to get on birth control because
Mm-hmm.
she was letting me spend the night at his house and stuff, you know. And but the incidents with the boy in the foster home that was molesting me, uh that was still happening too, you know. Um and I didn't want to tell my boyfriend at the time because I didn't want him to not believe me and then I'm cheating or whatever.
Yeah.
Or what if he says something and then I can't talk to him anymore, so I can't go to his house anymore, and that's the only safe place that I've got right now,
Yeah.
you know. Um because at least I'm choosing to sleep with him.
Yeah.
At least that's my choice. So anyway, she went to put me on birth control, and at the doctor's office, even the exam that I had to go through at the doctor's office to be put on birth control, I was not left alone in the room.
Yeah. Of course not. Yeah.
I didn't have an opportunity to tell anyone, get this boy out of the house.
Yeah.
But then what if they don't believe me and they make me leave instead of him? Then where am I going to go next? Because
Yeah.
we're running out of places here.
Yeah. 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 There's a lot of questions I have about it, and this stuff is really nasty when you start unpackaging what's really at the heart of all this stuff. It's why I'm so passionate about what I do and why it's so important to get these stories out there. um have you tried talking to your parents about, I know you were adopted, but have you ever had like a stable family? Actually, I should ask that for us. Have you ever had like a stable family where you've lived with them, or did that never happen? You were just like a product of the system pretty much your whole.
No, the family I grew up with was, even as an adult, there was 8 or 9 years that they wouldn't accept my phone calls. They wouldn't let me over at their house. Nothing. They wouldn't even answer the phone to talk to me when my son died.
Wow.
Um, and then, you know, I've got 2 failed marriages, and children that I lost custody of. So I didn't create my own family. Um, Only recently, I think I've gotten to a place in my life where I have a good relationship with a couple of my family members, and I have a really good boyfriend. We've been off and on for like 18 years, but
Nice.
his his family feels like my like they've always taken me in and just been really good to me, and I have found camaraderie in that situation.
Yeah.
But sometimes it just doesn't quite feel like family, you know.
I can understand that.
Yeah.
Have you tried talking to your family about how these places affected you? Or that's just, do you think that's ever going to be something that you'll be able to talk to them about? Or have you thought about it?
I have tried. um Years ago they didn't want to hear it, and when I have in the past talked to my sister about the abuse that happened at the hands of her ex-husband, she just blocked out those years of her life.
Yeah.
And I would say now, my mom, 86, 87 years old, and in her later last years of life, and my sister maybe in the last 2 or 3 years have told me that they believe me, that he was abusing me, and that my mom has actually apologized, that she's sorry, she didn't do anything to stop it. Their thing was always, you know, my dad being a heart patient, having the heart surgeries and everything, it could give him a heart attack. It could really stress him out, and that could kill him. So you can't tell your dad.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he might die.
Yeah.
So, but even then, when I got the apology, it was already like, I don't know how to explain it. I didn't need the apology anymore. I had already started my healing process. It's nice that they told me that they believe me, but it's a little too late.
Yeah. Okay. And if is there anything else you want people to know about your experience, or anything that you might tell a parent thinking about sending their kid to a place like this?
A couple of things. First of all, truly troubled teenagers that are acting out and are harming themselves or other people don't usually act that way because nothing has happened to them.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, these troubled teenagers are probably victims first. And secondly, if a parent's idea of sending their child to a place like this is, they're going to fix my child and then the child will come home and we'll be a happy family, you're fooling yourself. You're not going to have a healthy, healed family unless the entire family is part of the healing. You cannot make the burden of making a family life better the problem of a teenager.
Yeah.
It has to be something that the family actively works on together.
Yeah.
Together. Not when one is shipped off somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, even in the best scenarios, best situations of this happening, you're still going to have a complete lack of trust from your child. They're never going to be able to trust you again. Okay, they're going to feel betrayed by you. So even in the best scenario of this happening, I hate even calling it a best scenario, but even in like a scenario where you had like almost a perfect program and you thought like it was the best thing that ever happened to you, you're still going to feel abandoned and betrayed by your parents for leaving you there. And if you don't, you're probably in denial.
Absolutely.
So you're probably just in denial. And just being in denial doesn't make you a bad person. It can be one of two things. You're actually flat out in denial. You know what happened to you, but you're not denying it. But even then, you could not be aware of that. And then there's the other flip side of that, where like you don't even know what has happened to you. So that is a form of denial too, because you don't even know what you went through, because a part of you shut off when that trauma started happening to you in order to cope.
Absolutely.
So, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. If you ever want to do a part 2, a lot of people do, stuff comes up after they do these interviews, just take some notes and let me know, and we will schedule a part 2. And with that being said, thank you guys for watching the video so far. Please make sure you give the video a comment, like, subscribe if you're not already, and share, and we will catch you on the next one. Let's keep on exposing abuse and get these places shut down and give a voice to these kids that have no voice in these places. Till next time, peace.